And evasive enhancements generally, concluded Hermione. Well, at least you know one lesson you'll be having this year. That's more than Ron and I. I wonder when our owls results will come. Can't be too long now. It's been a month, said Ron. Hang on, said Harry, as another part of last night's conversation came back to him. I think Dumbledore said our owl results would be arriving today. Today, shrieked Hermione. Today? But why didn't you? Oh, my God, you should have said. She leapt to her feet. I'm going to see whether my owls have come. But when Harry arrived downstairs 10 minutes later, fully dressed and carrying his empty breakfast tray, it was to find Hermione sitting at the kitchen table in great agitation, while Mrs. Weasley tried to lessen her resemblance to half a panda. It just won't budge, Mrs. Weasley was saying anxiously, standing over Hermione with her wand in her hand and a copy of The Healer's Helpmate open at bruises, cuts, and abrasions. This has always worked before. I just can't understand it. It'll be Fred and George's idea of a funny joke, making sure it can't come off, said Ginny. But it's got to come off, squeaked Hermione. I can't go around looking like this forever. You won't, dear. We'll find an antidote. Don't worry, said Mrs. Weasley soothingly. Bill told me Al, Fred, and George are very amusing, said Fleur, smiling serenely. Yes, I can hardly breathe for laughing, snapped Hermione. She jumped up and started walking round and round the kitchen, twisting her fingers together. Mrs. Weasley, you're quite sure no owls have arrived this morning? Yes, dear, I'd have noticed, said Mrs. Weasley patiently. But it's barely 9. There's still plenty of time. I know I mussed up in ancient runes, muttered Hermione feverishly. I definitely made at least one serious mistranslation. And the defense against the dark arts practical was no good at all. I thought transfiguration went all right this time. But looking back... Hermione, will you shut up? You're not the only one who's nervous, barked Ron. And when you've got your 11 outstanding owls... Don't, said Hermione, flapping her hands hysterically. I know I've failed everything. What happens if we fail? Harry asked the room at large, but it was again Hermione who answered. We discussed our options with our head of house. I asked Professor McGonagall at the end of last term. Harry's stomach squirmed. He wished he had eaten less breakfast. At Buchsbottom's, said Fleur complacently, we had a different way of doing things. I think it was better. We set our examinations after 6 years of study, not 5, and then... Fleur's words were drowned in a scream. Hermione was pointing through the kitchen window. 3 black specks were clearly visible in the sky, growing larger all the time. They're definitely owls, said Ron hoarsely, jumping up to join Hermione at the window. And there's 3 of them, said Harry, hastening to her with a sigh. 1 for each of us, said Hermione in a terrified whisper. Oh no, oh no, oh no. She gripped both Harry and Ron tight around the elbows. The owls were flying directly at the burrow. 3 handsome tawnies, each of which had become clear as they flew lower over the path leading up to the house, was carrying a large square envelope. Oh no, squeaked Hermione. Mrs. Weasley squeezed past them and opened the kitchen window. 1, 2, 3, the owls soared through it and landed on the table in a neat line. All 3 of them lifted their right legs. Harry moved forward. The letter addressing him was tied to the leg of the owl in the middle. He untied it with fumbling fingers to his left. Ron was trying to dead-hatch his own results to his right. Hermione's hands were shaking so much she was making her whole owl tremble. Nobody in the kitchen spoke. At last, Harry managed to detach the envelope. He slid it open quickly and unfolded the parchment inside. Ordinary wizarding level results. Pass grades. Outstanding. Exceeds expectations. Acceptable. Fail grades. Poor. Dreadful. Troll. Harry James Potter has achieved. Harry read the parchment through several times, his breathing becoming easier with each reading. It was all right. He had always known that he would fail divination, and he had no chance of passing history of magic, given that he had collapsed halfway through the examination. But he had passed everything else. He ran his fingers down his grade. He had passed well in transfiguration and herbology. He had even exceeded expectations in potions. And best of all, he had achieved outstanding at defense against the dark arts. He looked around. Hermione had her back to him, her head bent. But Ron was looking delighted. Only failed divination and history of magic, and who cares about then? He said happily to Harry. Here, swap. Harry glanced down at Ron's grades. There was no outstandings there. You knew you'd be top at Defense Against the Dark Arts, said Ron, punching Harry on one shoulder. We've done all right, haven't we? Well done, said Mrs. Weasley proudly, ruffling Ron's hair. 7 owls. That's more than Fred and George got together. Hermione, said Ginny tentatively, for Hermione still hadn't turned around. How do you do? Not bad, said Hermione in a small voice. Oh, come off it, said Ron, striding over to her and whipping her results out of her hand. Yep, 10 outstandings, and 1 exceeds expectations at Defense Against the Dark Arts. He looked down at her, half amused, half exasperated. You're actually disappointed, aren't you? Hermione shook her head, but Harry laughed. Well, we're Newt students now, grinned Ron. Mum, are there any more sausages? Harry looked down at the results. They were as good as he could have hoped for. He felt just one tiny twinge of regret. This was the end of his ambition to become an Auror. He had not secured the required potions grade. He had known it all along he wouldn't, but he still felt a sinking in his stomach as he looked again at that small black E. It was odd, really, seeing that it had been a Death Eater in disguise who had first told Harry he would make a good Auror, but somehow the idea had taken hold of him, and he really couldn't think of anything else he would like to be. Moreover, it had seemed the right destiny for him since he had heard the prophecy a few weeks ago. Neither can live while the other survives. Wouldn't he be living up to the prophecy and giving himself the best chance of survival if he had joined those highly trained wizards whose job it was to find and kill Voldemort?